an ultimate global podcast. Hello, and welcome to our special weekly podcast on trending international and social affairs. You're listening to Saurabh Kora and George Mavros from Sydney.
So welcome to another exciting episode of Ultimate Global Podcast. And in today's episode, we are talking about the different ways of personal development in the year 2022. And today we are joined by a very special guest. His name is Mattia Basile. He's an account executive at Speechify. Speechify is turning readers into good listeners, and he has been he has a very exciting background. If we look at the background of Mattia, he's originally from Italy, and he also moved to Netherlands later on to pursue different experiences there, and I think now he's in the US. So, would you love to share a bit about your experiences, Mattia?
Yes, of course. Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for hosting me today. And yes, indeed, I'm currently in Miami, Florida, and I'm going to travel a bit around the States for work. So I'm going to be in New York next and then LA. So for whoever's there, shoot me a text, guys. And yeah, my background. So I'm originally from Italy, from South Italy. And I moved out when I was like 15, 16. I first went to Scotland, so upper UK to learn English. Then I went to Latvia, which is like up northeast of Europe, so it's one of the Baltic countries. After that, I completed my high school degrees, and I started studying my undergrads in the Netherlands, indeed. And then after my studies, I also worked into the financial sector. I used to work in private equity as an analyst and then as an M&A advisor. And then my latest stage in the career is switching from finance to sales, and I decided to do so with Speechify, which indeed is turning readers into good listeners. And my part is taking care of the B2B operations. So I deal with institutions like big universities, you might know, like Stanford or Harvard, Cornell, and so on. And we deal also with 4,500 companies. That's sort of in a nutshell about me.
Yeah, I think these are a lot of countries that you've already traveled to. Would love to ask you which one is your favorite country, and what is the difference that you found in these cultures when you were traveling from one country to another one?
Yeah, well, I don't really have a favorite one because, of course, part of my heart is always going to lie in Italy, where I'm actually from. Each and every country has pros and cons, so it's just a matter of it becomes very subjective at the end. I personally like the good weather and a place where it's always warm and where I can just have a gym like next to me and just meet people outside. So I'd say that best two cities I've been so far are Madrid, Spain, and Miami, actually, Florida. But this is just personal preference, just because I like the weather and I like this nightlife and social life outside, like outdoors instead of indoors.
Awesome, awesome. Now, coming back to the topic of discussion for today, Mattia, I know personal development is playing a very critical role in the lives of everyone, because the more you focus on personal development, your personal branding, the better it is for you in the near future. So, according to you, what are the different ways of personal development in 2022 in this era?
Yeah, well, definitely a lot of people are trying to explore this solo development or like this entrepreneur spirit. So everybody has a job, but then they also have a side hustle. And then eventually the side hustle becomes bigger than the job. So they just drop their 9 to 5 and they go with the side hustle, which becomes the better option. It is very important. It is very important. Why? Because let's say that all the millennials as well as the Gen Z, they're pressured by this uh, global uh, global phenomenon of aging population combined to growing population combined to globalization. And I guess, and again, this is my personal opinion, that these three factors combined generated this peer pressure, which brings guys like us, very young age, to just strive and hustle the whole time. So we're all doing like two, three different things at the same time. We're trying uh, to fulfill ourselves this way. Of course, then we're always having the majority of people which are just sticking to one job. But let's say that all the people that get well educated, like they go to college and they are doing I call them office jobs. Well, all the white collars are in our generation. Let's say the kids that were born from the 80, 85 onwards, we're just we're just always looking for more and more. And yeah, personal development, it comes with it. We all want to look fit and have a side hustle and have multiple sources of income while inflation is trying to kill us, sort of thing.
Yep. No. So, with respect to personal development, I also meant that what kind of things you are looking to do beyond your work life. I think one of the things that you mentioned is to create a passive source of income. Now, there can be
Yeah.
other things as well when you're focusing on personal development, such as building a strong LinkedIn profile, building
Mhm.
a strong personal brand while selling your story to the employers, having good communication skills, having those soft skills which can give you an edge over others in the market. And in COVID 19, we learned that ability to come out of your comfort zone and also become more resilient. I think COVID 19 taught us how to become more resilient to overcome the challenges. So, what do you have to say in that regard?
Yeah, Sarah, thank you for clarifying. Well, on the personal development side, so I intended that as side hustles at the beginning. My bad. Uh, well, I guess that the most important things that people are underestimating is that machines are going to replace most of the hard skills. So, as you mentioned, all the soft skills are critical, and building a personal brand around your persona is fundamental. So, skills like public speaking or just having a strong network, which comes together with building a good network on social media such as LinkedIn, or taking part in podcasts like this, just trying to meet as many people as possible and selling your story, sort of thing. It's it's critical. It's critical, and you gotta also give something to people, which is besides your hard skills. So let's say I am a financial analyst, but that's not enough because there are thousands and thousands of financial analysts. So you not only have to be a good financial analyst, but you also have to be a well-spoken person. Your vocabulary has to be appropriate. Your public speaking has to be excellent. Your pool of close contacts has to be always like on point and always updated, as well as your knowledge in general. So part of the personal development, I guess, is being always up to date. So being always informed about what's going on in the world. And this, I think, is something that I got from living in different countries, and which I love is that always reading news from different countries. So I read Italian news, I read UK news, I read European news in general, which are usually coming from France or Belgium, and I read US news. So it's just a matter of like being as informed as possible, and this gives really a plus when we're talking about personal brand and we're talking about building network and just sounding sharper.
Yep, I think that's fantastic. Those insights are really valuable for the listeners. I also want to understand from you, how has this changed from the past? Because I guess you're born in the 1980s era, or even if we go slightly back, and also looking at the decades of 1990s and 2000s, how has this changed from what was there 20 years back or 30 years back in terms of your personality development? So, are we looking at different ways of communicating? Because I think the foundational soft skills still remain the same, but the importance of being more active on portals like LinkedIn has become so much important now, as compared to say 20 years back.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So um, the I think that the best way to explain this is with the Moore's law. So The Moore's law is the one that says that every 18 months you can make a chip, which is a microchip, which is half the size but double the speed. And this explains perfectly what went on with the technological development. So if we think that in 2010 or 2008, maybe, yeah, we had the first iPhone Touch. It was called iPhone Touch. Why? Because it was the first smartphone which you could actually touch screen and command. And now we have this like whatever iPhone 13 with like a triple camera, which is better than whichever like a professional brand of cameras. If we think about the internet speed, if we think that the first phone that we probably had in our hands with internet was going to hatch, so it was going like so slow, like to charge an internet page, a browser, it would take minutes. And now with the new M1 chip, you can have it in like a fraction of a second. So together with this, a good analogy would be the personal development of people in relation to international relationships. So if before I was good just by knowing that some people in my city or in my region or in my country, now I have to know people anywhere in the world. I need to know people in all the continents. I need to get in touch with people. And why? Because there are no excuses. There are no boundaries anymore. So just with a click, look at you and me. Like I'm in Miami, you're in Australia, and we're talking. We're talking as if we were sitting at the same table. So I guess that the development over these years just expanded and just defeated all these high barriers that were there before with the normal like phone calls that would be super expensive. So if before we would have had to have this call, let's say 15 years ago, we would just pay, I don't know, like $300 just because we had to talk for 10 minutes or 20 minutes. And now it's free. There's the internet and there is an amazing connection. I can clearly see you. I can clearly see the background and so on. And the internet speed just allows this all with satellites and cables.
Absolutely. I think the emerging technologies in terms of the rapidly growing internet and also the other technologies coming into play like IoT, artificial intelligence, I think they have dramatically changed the way we look into different things. I also wanted to ask you because some of the people might say that we don't want to be that interactive on social media platforms, or we don't get enough time to interact there, or we don't get enough time to attend events, meet different people. So is it all about prioritizing, according to me, or it's all about what you want to do? So how do you think that personal development is so important these days, and the people should recognize that prioritizing personal development, meeting new people, building those connections is also equally important, as closing your deals during the day?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. Personal development should be treated in the same way as we treat hard skills. So I believe that whichever soft skill, which again falls into the personal development, should be treated as a hard skill. So if to learn mathematics, I started with multiplying numbers and adding numbers and dividing, and then I went to equations, then I went to square roots and so on. I should do the same with personal development. So it's just following a path, creating your own path. The hard thing is that personal development is indeed personal, so it's different from each and every person, and it's based on personal priorities. So there's not like a path. There's not like a book of personal development. Yes, there are some guidelines. So people might encourage you to take courses of coding, take courses of uh, whatever it's your profession, like towards that direction, public speaking, and so on. But but at the end, it's so subjective that this is what makes it difficult. And I guess that the key for that is the rule of the 5P. So previous planning prevents poor performance. That's like a golden rule, at least for me. So whatever you do, just practice it before, plan it before. whatever you're going to an interview, if you plan before, if you practice, if you just ask a friend, hey, Sarah, like, can you just listen to me for like 15 minutes because I'm gonna have an interview with this company and I'm applying for this job. I'm preventing my poor performance later, and this is part of the professional development because nobody's paying me to attend an interview. So it's just part of acquiring and feeling more confident about these soft skills, about being well spoken, about having the right timing when speaking, knowing who we are talking to and how we're relating to them.
There might be a lot of young professionals listening to us on this podcast who are definitely either millennials or in the Gen Z category. And I know when I interact with them in my university as well here in Sydney, some of the commonly asked questions to me is that we are building everything from scratch. What would be your advice to those kind of people who are just starting off their journey on LinkedIn, or who are just starting off their journey of communicating with the people? What should be their initial steps? Like, for example, I generally tell them to just go out in the market and start having those initial interactions with people. Only then you will gain confidence. Unless and until you don't do it on your own, you will not gain confidence to do the things in your way.
Yeah, the best advice I can give is just do as much as possible. So I guess that personal development, personal network, or whichever soft skill or hard skill you're going to develop is just a matter of practice, and most often is a game of numbers. So if you want to get in touch with, let's say I want to be the next CTO of Apple, okay, so I should just reason like backwards. What did the CTO go to reach that point? So what I want to do is that I want to talk either to CTOs of companies or I want to talk to the high product managers in the companies. So what I do is I try with 100, and then you might say, a guy that is in college might come to me and be like, "Hey, I contacted already 500 people and it's not working." I would like 500 people in how much time? A month? 2 months? Like that's not enough. I would contact like 500 people per week. And then if you contact 500 people per week and it still doesn't work, then you have a problem. But it's a game of numbers. So my best piece of advice is just hustle and don't give up. And eventually, if you do 500 per week, if you try to reach out to 500 people per week, one or two per month are just gonna come back to you and give it either negative or positive feedback. And that's how development arise. This is going to be for getting network. This is going to be for getting a job. This is going to be also to get into a master's or whatever you're going to do. It's just about trying as much as possible.
Absolutely. And I think I can also share it with my example itself, that when I was starting off with this podcast, I used to reach out to 200, 300 people every week, to make sure that I can get uh, quality speakers on this podcast and kind of deliver the same on LinkedIn. Of course, you don't get replies from everyone. You might get replies from 10 people or 11 people, but that's how you kind of start building the journey. Any final thoughts, Mattia, on what can be some of the key learnings in your words, top two or three key learnings on personal development, which the students or people who are listening to this podcast can take away from?
Yes. So my top three key learnings are: first one is the impression you make on somebody is made in the first 7 seconds, and I highly believe that. So always be well spoken, always be prepared, always be looking good. That doesn't matter if you have long hair, short hair, beard, no beard. Like doesn't really matter, but just feel good, feel confident, anytime. Like never say like I wouldn't expect to meet somebody, because it's in the unexpected moment that you meet somebody, and that's your chance to make the best impression. So always remember this: best impression and first impression are made in the first few seconds you meet a person. Second is the 80-20 rule, which I highly believe it's effective. So 20% results, that all your resources are driven by 20% of effort, and the rest 80, well, try to get it off or try to understand what you're not doing efficient enough there. And the third piece of advice is just the most valuable thing we have is time. So when we hear that the new rich is the person that has enough time, that's indeed true. So I'd say all our youth should be time focused rather than money focused, and you can really live anywhere, and based on the money you have, you can have a great experience regardless. There are a lot of amazing places, and they're not necessarily super expensive. So just try to make the best out of your time. Between 20 and 30s is a heartbeat. So you don't want to miss out, and that time is never going to come back.
Absolutely. I think that's a very great closing remark by you, that time is money. And if you don't value time, no one is going to value you in the future. So if you are punctual, if you are doing things on time, if you have prioritized the right things at the right time, then of course the things will fall in place for you according to what you have, according to your goals and mission. So thank you so much, Mattia, for joining us on today's podcast. I think it was really great to have you and you sharing these insights. And hopefully we can get some comments from the audience who watches this episode. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Sarah.
This is an Ultimate Global Podcast. Hello, and welcome to our special weekly podcast on trending international and social affairs. You're listening to Saurabh Kora and George Mavros from Sydney.